Hello, everyone. It's great to be here at Net Zero. My name is Dominic Powers, and I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Dentsu in Asia Pacific. And I'm honored to have with me today Ganesan Ampalavanar. Ganesan is a 25-year veteran of Nestle. He's worked across a diverse set of countries in the region, from India to Vietnam, Malaysia, and is now the President Director of Nestle in Indonesia, arguably Southeast Asia and APAC as the region's most dynamic, complex, and promising growth market. Welcome, Ganesan. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Dominic, and hi, everybody. Hi.
So we've got a really interesting session today for you all. And what I want to do before we start having a conversation is really set some context for some of our international audience here who perhaps don't understand the APAC region and the promise that it has, obviously, for the next couple of years and beyond. So APAC is projected to become the world's wealthiest region by 2030. And within the next decade, 55% of the world's upper middle income households will actually call this region home. Much of this will be driven by rapid digitalization, where we're having markets leapfrog what's going on in the West, and of course, a young, vibrant population that is growing in the region. But as things stand, the Asian century is coming at a really, really huge cost. Development and modernization are driving huge increases in consumption. And while this is driving growth, it's obviously not something that's necessarily good for the planet. And so our living reality is that compared to other regions, Asia-Pacific communities will disproportionately suffer and bear the social, economic, and environmental consequences of climate change. And so, without a doubt, businesses in Asia are now at that nexus of need, purpose, and opportunity. And as marketers, we're obviously fully cognizant of this. From our own Dentsu APAC research on corporate sustainability earlier this year, 90% of marketers in region here consider sustainability to be extremely important. Over 70% of them believe it's imperative for growth and long-term business continuity. But it really is a complex topic, and our study has also found that compared with all the other business divisions, that marketing actually lags behind. Now, only 34% of marketing divisions that were surveyed by us at the beginning of the year are executing on plans and measuring progress, compared with some 51% in corporate strategy and 46% in supply chain. This also mirrors a finding from an earlier global study that was done by the World Federation of Advertisers too. So we're here today to discuss, obviously, really pertinent topic, not just for Asia-Pacific marketers, but for all of us. And that's really how can marketing and how can brands move the needle in the right direction to fight climate change. So Ganesan, tell us about some of the work that Nestle is doing to reduce its carbon footprint as you work towards your own net zero targets.
Right. Thank you. And let me first start with our commitments. Nestle has made global commitments, and these global commitments are also trickled down to Indonesia. So we are aiming to achieve net zero by 2050. And that is not limited to scope 1, 2, or 3. It is scope 1 and 2 and 3. Nestle believes in science-based target initiatives. So this is the way the United Nations measures these targets. So we have got commitments that are measurable and time-bound. So we aim to achieve this by making sure that the entire value chain, from our suppliers down to the very end of our consumer value chain, is incorporated into this giant roadmap that we have built. So we have done many things, but many of them are small things. And we also realize that we have to do many, many small things throughout inside the company and outside the company. So I'll give you a few small examples first. We are the first company in Indonesia to completely do away with plastic straws. Plastic straw is a small component in our ready-to-drink business. But however, that decision, while it's small, has got major ramifications in terms of cost. Today, Nestle Indonesia is the only company in Indonesia that's moved from plastic straw to paper straw. And while doing this, everybody says, well done, but there is a will and want gap for the consumers. Everybody likes it, but are they willing to pay the price? And this is what I think the challenge is. How do we valorize this to the consumers and our customers as we go forward? Another example of how we have done, an example of how we are reducing our carbon footprint is the use of trash or leftovers from our existing partners or farmers. So we are the first company again in the Nestle group to use rice husks as a fuel or a biomass fuel. So we are very proud that all our factories today, we have invested in a biomass conversion facility that uses rice husks, which for other reasons could have been left in the field and the farmer really burns it off as waste. We have taken this rice husk, brought to our factories, and in one of our factories alone, we are using 8,800 tons of rice husk to produce fuel. For otherwise would have been we have been using other sources of fuel, which might not be renewable. So these are just two small examples, but we have to take these examples continuously throughout the entire value chain, and we can't wait. We got to move forward. Challenge is, how do we tell the story to our consumers and make them choose our brands continuously?
Very important, and I think obviously from a marketing perspective, that's one of the challenges that we have. Obviously, is that we have to get this messaging across that these choices are really important for consumers to make, for citizens to make, and that's obviously where agencies like Dentsu love to work with brands like Nestle to help get that messaging out. So obviously, you're tackling this problem in the market in Indonesia. As we said, we know it's a very large-scale problem, and obviously, as we look to net zero carbon emissions, there are steps that organizations have to take, and you mentioned your scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And if we're looking at this as a learning exercise for other brands like Nestle, whether they're large or small, what advice would you give to some of those companies out there that are just starting on this journey to understand what they need to do, obviously, and how can they do their bit around measurement and obviously managing emissions?
Right. It'll be a little bit presumptuous for us to give advice, but I think in a humble way, we like to model the way. One is to share whatever we're doing with like-minded companies, even though they might be competitors, because we will compete with competitors aggressively on the shelves, but we need to aggressively cooperate behind the scene to set standards for the industry. And that is why we believe in collective activism. We are willing to work with industry consortiums or associations, and we can't do it ourselves. I think the old adage is it takes a village to educate a child. I think it takes the planet to save the planet. And this is why we are moving ahead with whatever little that we can do. And I said many small steps. And at the same time, working with industry associations. So in Indonesia, we have got a few associations that we are members with or members of. One of it is called PRAISE, ironically, Packaging and Recycling Association for Indonesian Sustainable Environment. Many of our competitors sit in it. But here we try to come together with like-minded companies and present our case to government to make sure that we are also in sync with the other big giant in this proposition. It's about business, government, and society. So we are willing to work with as many players as we can. So in doing this, we also like to share with some of our smaller partners or business partners, who are many of them are small and medium-sized enterprises. When they see us actioning this, and when they see us a little bit more serious about this kind of things, it's a bit of action with the talk, then we can also go beyond our value chain within Nestle into all our partners to come aboard. So we have to go as a coalition of the willing and able in solving this.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because as we look at this from a Dentsu lens, obviously we've done a lot of research in this. We have our own Dentsu Good organization, which looks at how we can help brands like Nestle to better position themselves as well as undertake real action. But what was really interesting for us, while there's massive awareness of climate change and obviously the appreciation of the severity of this issue, that appreciation is actually quite patchy. In this region, there are still a significant number of people that, even in markets like Australia, don't actually believe we're in a crisis. So it's quite a scary place to be. And obviously, this seems like a paradox for this region because we know that these are some of the very same markets that are experiencing the floods, the heat waves, the biodiversity loss, and many of these kind of very palpable impacts of climate change. And so I think it's also that challenge for marketers. It's we want to do our bit as organizations, as producers of products in the supply chain, but also should we invest in educating consumers as well? And I think the path that Nestle's taken about making people understand, obviously, that the move to paper straws from plastic straws is really important, but it's a gargantuan task. And you're right. I think we need that collective activism, whether it's in a market like Indonesia or whether it's add net zero as a whole and everybody driving towards that. So it is going to take us all to save the planet and doing our bit along with all other industries as well. So if you're looking at obviously what you do with Nestle, and if we're looking at sustainability strategies that really work in kind of collaboration with obviously the other outcomes that businesses have to drive, which are obviously your sales-driven KPIs. Obviously you have to demonstrate a winning strategy for sustainability from a branding perspective, but you also have to manage that bottom line because we need that virtuous cycle. We need obviously companies like Nestle to generate profit so you can continue to innovate in packaging or areas like that. From your mind, what really makes a winning strategy for sustainability? What does that look like from a Nestle lens?
Sometimes it's good to be top down. And sustainability, unfortunately, today in its current form, as it's evolving and it's in its nascent stage, it has to be in the CEO's agenda, first and foremost. I can't ask a brand manager to carry the KPIs if the big ship or the corporate is not part of it and also is accountable and responsible for it. So I'll start with part of a winning strategy. It has to be in the CEO's agenda. And trust me, it's part of my deliverables for 2022 and beyond. And at the same time, in moments like this, when there are competing pressures or claims or KPIs, it has to be top down a little bit to get the ball rolling. So, and on top of this, sustainability is not a standalone. It has to be embedded in the businesses. It's part of business. It is like the 4Ps of the old times. Now it's 4Ps plus 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 and sustainability. So it's and. So part of the winning strategy, apart from top down and the CEO's agenda, is clear measures broken down at business and brand level. So we have a general roadmap in this. It's about sustainable packaging. It's about responsible sourcing. It's reduction of use of water, and so on. So what we have done in a sort of structured way, I think in the beginning we need to put structures and processes for something new like this to move. So we have in every business, what are the deliverables they have to do in reducing plastic, for example? What are the changes in material of packaging that we have to do from not so recyclable to recyclable? So that winning strategy has to be comprehensive, a roadmap for the entire organization, broken down to roadmaps and action plans for individual brands. So I think that's the way we'd like to go about it. Everybody's interested, but I think the big guy has to give a big kick to make sure it starts moving down the rest of the organization. And I think today I'm quite confident, at least in Indonesia. We still have many mountains to climb and many rivers to cross, but at least we're moving a little bit faster than I thought originally. So the commitment is there. A winning strategy comes from a roadmap with measures driven by the CEO's agenda.
Yeah, and I think that is really important. And one of the things that came out of our sustainability survey that we did earlier this year, that's going to be launched at the end of the year, is there was that values action gap that we definitely see for global organizations where that strategy is set at the kind of CEO level, the global organization level, but when it gets into markets, it's sometimes difficult to translate into actual action. So seeing an organization like Nestle actually being able to do that and have an impact in the market, not only is really heartening, but it's great to see that it can happen. And it's our hope that by listening to yourself and what you're doing, other brands can take from your leadership and can really understand what needs to be done. Really important. So one of the other things that I think really stands out for us particularly as we look to markets like Indonesia. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is communicating with consumers, obviously, and helping them understand the part that they need to play. And really, this is kind of a follow-up question to everything and more, just looking for an opinion of the direction we have to go as, I suppose, global brands. Obviously, if you think about what's driving some of the challenges we have, it's been global consumption. As I've mentioned, obviously being in a region where consumption is going to drive almost exponentially by 2050, it's something we have to think about. Is it something that Nestle has thought about internally around how can we educate responsible consumption? Is that something that is on the radar at the moment? Because I think as we talk to various brands, that's something they're also really thinking about, is that kind of shift in their business planning to think about not growth in consumption at all costs, but can we make it managed? Is that an area that you're looking at the moment?
Right. I think without a doubt, we have to educate everybody, not only the consumers. We also should start the education process in the inside. So it starts with our employees first. At Nestle, we always say good food, good life, and we want to be a force for good. But that cannot move the needle unless people in the inside are part of the willing and able. So we also spend a lot of time educating ourselves, and that's from me down to every single marketing person. We have many mandatory trainings, for example, on diversity, inclusions. But now we're also sort of following that pathway to have a mandatory training for sustainability. It's not a training, but it's more awareness. So first, we start with the inside. Second, people along our value chain, so which is also our business partners. So we're moving a little bit deeper now with our customers. Many of our customers today, we are just a provider of the finished product. They are forgetting that they also can play a small role in, for example, collecting the plastic waste. But that also starts with their education and down the line and so on and so forth. Now, coming to the consumer itself, again, this is awareness building. We just can't put a TVC or go on digital and say, use the paper straw. It helps the environment. I think that kind of a slapstick marketing won't work. But we are using every single avenue. For example, Milo, Milo is very active into grassroots sports development. We do a lot of activities with schools in competitions and football and badminton and so on. But in that activity, we also bring, oh, by the way, sports is a good teacher. At the same time, let's educate ourselves about the environment. So we are incorporating awareness in all our marketing activities. Yet another example, a small thing again, on the packs, on the Milo ready-to-drink pack, we put the good to know part. We also talk about the small things that we do about the environment. So every single piece of real estate that we have, whether it's digital surface or on television commercials or on the pack itself, we are putting messages on what the consumer, as they consume, needs to know about what we have done to the product. So these are all baby steps. Again, this is going to take a long time. But why I started with schools again, I think the next generation of consumers for us are going to be the kids today who are in schools. Indonesia is a millennial country. The average age is 29. But as the new consumers start growing up, I think this awareness needs to be done at school level. So we are, again, very proud that through Milo, with the cooperation of the Ministry of Education in Indonesia, we have got programs that at least plants the seeds in terms of sustainability awareness. And we are very clear, this is not going to suddenly produce results today. It's today for tomorrow, basically.
Yeah, no, that education piece, and I think as an industry, we talk about consumers a lot, and I think there's this move now, which I'm very supportive of, is to actually make them part of the solution and think of them as citizens, because we're all here ultimately now to focus on the well-being of the planet, the well-being for all. And I think involving the younger generations to understand the challenges that are ahead and having them as part of many solutions is really important. But that's really heartening to hear. Getting involved at the grassroots level is really good. And so we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I kind of want to just finish with some kind kind of summary and insights. But as we take a step back, I think there's this role for marketing ensuring that kind of better future for them. And the last IPCC report, explicitly mentioned the importance of behavior shifts and the potential of demand mitigation. And that's really one of the ways forward that we can get to safer emissions levels. So that education around type of consumption is important. And obviously, everyone in this virtual room knows that as businesses, we must all do our part if we're going to have any hope of reaching 2030, 2050 net zero targets, and obviously missing that 1.5%. And I think we could both, and all marketers, we're at the forefront of this citizen knowledge and trends, and they're obviously naturally best positioned as those change agents. And I think we now have to really accept that responsibility. And today we've spoken about some of that incremental improvements you can obviously make. We've talked about the importance of clear objectives as KPIs. One of the things that's kind of lingering for me, though, and this was out of our research, is really just to leave the audience with some things to think about. And I think one of the challenges we face as marketers is that there is a structural challenge that we have as marketers. And I think there's a potential for us to look at how we're structured to really then set ourselves up to be those change agents. And if we think how those KPIs have really driven us as an industry, it's always been about short-term revenue growth and not really being given that mandate to drive innovation in product or citizen journeys that can really move the needle. So hearing what you're doing has been really inspiring. And so while we literally don't have much time today, we obviously don't have much time to achieve the goals we want to achieve from net zero targets and obviously driving well-being for all. And so I think as we look at this, as Dentsu calls it, this B2B to S movement, business to business society, I think it's important that we think about growth from good. And all these things you're doing is really great in Indonesia. And so I'll just give one last comment, then it would be great to hand over to you just to finish up. But I think as we leave, there's a quote that I like to give that's really stuck with me for a very long time. And it's a quote from David Bauer, the founder of Friends of the Earth. And it's very clear and very moving. And there is no business to be done on a dead planet. And I think we have to really take that to heart and think about what our place is as marketers, as brands, as we all join this collective fight to ultimately save the planet. Great to talk to you again, Ganesan. It's always great to have these conversations. And do you have any last comments or thoughts for our audience here?
It's better to make small steps and to move no matter how small the movement is, because waiting is not an option. Staying still is not an option. So we at Nestle Indonesia don't have all the answers, but we are moving forward. And that's the most important thing. Second, while we don't know all the answers, it's the human enterprise revolving around entrepreneurship and innovation. We will find the answers. Now, that's what we got to encourage across everybody in the organization, but more so to our marketing colleagues. Because at the end of the day, what faces the consumers are our brands. And we need to tell the truth, or the truth needs to be told in a better way. And part of that truth is this respect for the planet that we must have in our businesses. So the brands are the carriers of this message. And for marketing colleagues, again, I don't have all the answers. We have to be an and company. It's not or. We have to deliver short term, and I'm sure I keep getting complaints from members of my team that I keep putting positive pressure, at least, on market share, on sales growth, but it doesn't end there. The and comes with all the other things that we need to do. So it's okay if we don't know all the answers, but it's important to know the right questions at least, because we are going to be judged one way or another. Business is going to be held accountable for some of the actions that we did today for tomorrow. So in part of the being an and company, we can run, but we can't hide. And that is why I think the sustainability wave is already there. Maybe the tsunami hasn't come yet. The wave is moving, and we better jump on the bandwagon to be in the right side of the argument.
Absolutely. And I hope that leaves some food for thought even for our audience here today. So thanks very much, Ganesan, President Director of Nestle in Indonesia. Great to have you here. I'm Dominic Powers, Chief Growth Officer at Dentsu. Thanks for your time today, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.